Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate, the League Two podcast. And I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host for the evening, Matt Boosey from Gills In The Blood TV. Matt, it's great to have you on. Thanks so much for your time tonight. I just wanted to talk about the vacancy in the manager hot seat at Gillingham. Do you think there's going to be a change of style in terms of the approach the club are going for, and what do you think was the motivation for changing manager after dismissing, of course, Neil Harris?
Genuinely not sure on both counts. I'd imagine, obviously, there's reasons why Brad Gallington or Kenny Jackett or Paul Scally or a combination of all have made this call to get rid of Neil last week. I'm not sure it's the right call based on league position. And I've said that. I've been very vocal about that. I understand the concerns were the lacks of goals and the lack of being able to win conceding the first goal. But we were 8th in the league and we were 4 points off top. So you're giving any new manager very little wiggle room in terms of what's an upgrade on Neil Harris, what's an improvement on Neil Harris. They got to be in the playoffs at worst to make it the right decision if you're going off of league position, regardless of style or systems or anything like that. If you win 3 points, you win 3 points. It doesn't matter how you get there at the end of the day. I know there were question marks over whether Neil could have taken us to the next step and got us into that top 7. I understand that entirely. Just the timing was very odd for me. And yeah, there was a couple of very pertinent lines in the statement that came from the club, and that was a change of direction. And the other one was they want to appoint a head coach. Now, Neil came in as a manager. So does this mean tweaks to the structure? Keith Millen's seemingly ruled himself out of it already. He doesn't want it on any more than an interim basis, which is what he's doing at the moment. But I don't know about you as an outsider and a neutral, but there's not many names on the list that at least bookies have generated that I think immediately upgrade on Neil Harris or excite me sufficiently to think that, yeah, if you get him in, we're definitely going to be better than we have been. But again, May will be the time when we find out whether this was the correct call or the incorrect call.
Yeah, I would probably say it was the wrong call. I do understand the concerns over the sustainability of performances, although I don't think they're necessarily as horrendous as maybe has been suggested. I don't think we should say, it's been a complete smash and grab in for every win. But I do feel like, changing manager when you're in a promotion race, I'm not sure I can get behind that, because I think you want a little bit of continuity. Maybe the time would be, if Gillingham don't go up or miss out on the top 7 in the summer, to maybe have a rethink. But I would have said Neil Harris had deserved the opportunity to take things on. But let's deal with the situation that we're in now. I guess Steve Bruce is the 1 to 2 favourite at the moment with one of the bookmakers. I'm not sure stylistically there'd be a huge change there from Neil Harris. And yet, on the flip side, do you want a huge stylistic change when you're in the middle of a promotion race? Because you've got Scott Lindsay at 6 to 1, who's very much a possession connoisseur. Do you want to change the style while you're trying to get results in the here and now? Lots of more questions than answers, it feels.
That was exactly my sentiments on it, and I've said that all week now because we're 7 days down the line since it happened, and I think the Steve Bruce one might be a red herring because I believe he was at a funeral at the club, so was photographed.
Because he played for Gillingham in the 90s, didn't he? So
very early 80s.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah,
then
he went to Norwich and then he went on to Man United. But it seems that Steve was photographed outside the stadium, but was at a club-related funeral, which was an ex-manager or player's wife had passed away. And that is the reason he was spotted. Someone then lumped on it. Bookies then protected themselves, and he went from 25 to 1 to 6 to 4 overnight. But I'm not sure there's much in it. I could be completely wrong. I don't know. So, but that is the rumours that I've heard. Scott Lindsay, like you say, would be going completely the other way compared to Neil Harris. Then you get the out of work candidates, the Carl Robinsons, the Cowleys, none of which to me say definitely going to do a better job than Neil Harris. And this is where I've been at all week, and it's where I still am. And my concern is that, no disrespect to Keith Millen, we end up wasting a month. Not wasting a month, that's probably the wrong word, because Keith could come in and we could go to Walsall and win, and we could get a point home to Notts County, and it gives the whole process a bit more time.
Sure.
But the risk is if he comes and we don't get, say we get a draw at Walsall and then Notts County turn us over and we go to Swindon the Tuesday after and get beat, suddenly we're 10th, 11th, 12th and outside the playoffs again by more than we were when Neil Harris was dismissed. So I think there's risks to it. It's given me sort of Paul Scally sacking Steve Evans vibes at the moment, and we might end up in a worse position a month down the line. I get the whole statement coming out about we've got to take our time, we've got to make the right appointment, but that's generic for me. I don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to know that we're interviewing people and we've got to make the right appointment. So I'd have liked personally, and a lot of people have said I'm wrong for asking, and that's fine. We all see it different, but I'd have liked more of a statement explaining what the new direction was, the reasons why we've sacked him, rather than just it was a tough decision. He's a nice bloke. Again, that's very generic and very wishy-washy for me. Sure. But yeah, just more information regarding what this potential change of direction and why it's now going to be a head coach as opposed to a manager, because they're quite big changes potentially to how we run the football club. And I'm of the same idea that you. I thought Neil deserved the chance to see this job through, that he started in the most ridiculously poor circumstances when he took the job 20 months ago. So I think, but like you say, I think it was too soon, but I want Gillingham Football Club to be as good as they can be, which I used to say to you, when did I want Scally in, Scally out? I just want Gillingham to be as the best version of themselves. And we've got to move forward because it's done now. We can't change it.
I want to look at a couple of the candidates that are from the National League scene. You've got Andy Woodman, who I think's done a good job at Bromley. Dennis Khatib, who won the National League South title with Ebbsfleet, presumably playing quite an attacking style of football. And then Kevin Mayer, who's done a fantastic job at Southend, although I'd imagine he'd be wanting to be part of the new plan at Southend now they've got a takeover in place and looking up a bit more. Do you have an inkling on who you'd want to be the next Gillingham manager?
I don't. And the reason I say I don't, Gabe, is because I don't know what direction we're going down. And that's what it keeps coming back to for me. We don't know what this new direction is. Is it going to be proven EFL manager, a Carl Robinson, a Danny Cowley? Is it going to be, I don't know, a coach that we pluck out of a Championship or a Premier League team that's, I don't know, a first team on the coaching staff, or is it an under-23 manager? Or is it
Cowley's, I think, would probably be my pick. I know it's easy for me to say that because I've been big on them in the past, but I do think they're the type that they'd get the team playing sort of direct football, but
which I don't think a lot of our fans wanted Neil out to go away from that. So I think there'd be a lot of fans very disappointed if that's how we went.
Yeah, but I suppose what I would say to that is I think Cowley sides they're not afraid to get the ball forward early, but they're not, I wouldn't call them necessarily long ball managers per se. I think they like their teams to look forward for positive openings and then play forward with quality. And they like their teams to be really aggressive against the ball as well. So I think that would probably be an option. I think the Cowleys have a huge amount of potential still. I think their stock has dropped a little bit over the last 4 or 5 years. Certain things have gone against them, I would argue. I think if they were managing Portsmouth in the current climate for League One rather than a couple of years ago, I think they would have comfortably got them into the top 6 and possibly in the automatic conversation, because the standard of League One now is much weaker than it was when they were in charge. So lots of injuries at the end of their time at Portsmouth as well. So they would be my pick. But it's that question mark. Do you want to completely have a massive sea change in terms of stylistic identity? I'm not sure that's necessarily healthy.
This is the questions that remain unanswered. I wouldn't be against the Cowleys coming in, because I think there's a difference between long ball and direct. I think long ball can give this sort of vision of being a bit aimless and just clipping it into an area and with no real plan. But you can be direct like the Cowleys are. You can be direct like Steve Evans was, where he played into a front man, and then you've got good players playing off him in the final third, like your Dempseys, your Grahams, your McDonalds, your Ollie Lees, that type of thing. So, but until we know what the change of direction is, I think it's very difficult to pick out even a top 3 rather than a specific one, because they all bring different traits, don't they? Positive, negative, and we don't know which way we're going. We don't know if we're going upwards. Like I say, we don't know if we're going to pluck someone out of academy. We don't know whether we're going to go into non-league and trust someone to come up and keep building their reputation. So there's a lot still unanswered 7 days on from when the decision was made, in my opinion.
Sure, yeah. In terms of non-league candidates, I did want to bring in our co-host, Tom Williams. Good evening, Tom. We've got Nathan from Rob Ryan Red to bring in shortly, but I wanted to, before we move on, just pick your brains about a couple of the candidates on the sort of bookmaker lists. Obviously, you can take those with a whole bucket of salt, but Andy Woodman and Dennis Katlib, in your eyes, do you see either of them as a potential solution for what Gillingham need?
Yeah, I think both bring their strengths and merits. And good evening, by the way, both of you, and thanks for having me on. But yeah, Andy Woodman was sort of the one of my top choices for the job, and I know he was heavily linked last time, and I think he's a great manager. I've spoken to him personally, and he just is. I can see why players want to play for him, because he's got that great sort of buy-in, and he has that great understanding. He's a fantastic manager. He's hilarious as well, and that doesn't necessarily mean a lot as a manager, but he is a really great character, and he has some of the best links in football. He has got links to Arsenal, Newcastle, all these top Crystal Palace, all these top academies, and he regularly brings in players from these academies, sort of, I guess, his favours to him, and he has that pull and those links, so he can bring in.
It's not the sort of thing that you would assume, would it, with a manager with a non-league background, that they've got these high-end contacts. So that's a really interesting point. I just wonder, coming into it, Tom, I think the Gillingham job's very favourable in lots of ways, because the squad is arguably a top 3 squad at this level, and they're already in a good position. But in some ways it comes with challenges, because it's like, do you go for, and we were just discussing this with Matt, do you go for a whole stylistic sea change in season, or do you stick with the football that got Neil Harris sacked, or do you try and sort of evolve things in between the two and work things in more carefully? What do you think Andy Woodman's approach would be, let's say theoretically, if he got the job?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest contrast between the two names you've mentioned. I think Woodman would be more of a continuation of the style. He's very much keep things tight. Bromley actually averaged the lowest possession in the National League.
Oh, really?
The bottom of the possession table. They're a very physical team, but it's fast and direct and quick transitions. Whereas the absolute manager, Kutrib, is very much more attacking, front foot type football. Both play a similar formation, both are sort of 5 at the back with wing backs. But
is it 3-4-3 for Katrib, or 3-5-2?
Yeah, sort of. And it's very much built around getting it's Dominic Polion, actually, their striker. Very much built around getting him the chances. So it's very front foot, very attack minded approach. So I guess that would be what would give him sort of the nod, in terms of that. I feel a big part of the reason that Neil Harris has moved on was because of the performances rather than the results, because as we've seen, they're back in the top 3 now after 1 or 2 games, whatever it is, since he's gone. So that would be reason why his name could be favourable. But both are great options. I think both are great choices, really. Both managers I can speak very, very highly of.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it'll be really fascinating to monitor the situation and see who Gillingham go with, because it's a really curious appointment from so many aspects. I do want to now bring in Nathan from Rob Ryan Red, the Wrexham podcast. Good evening to you, Nathan. How are you, mate?
Fine, thanks for having me back on, gents. Appreciate it.
Yeah, looking very smart as always, Nathan.
Yeah,
how are you feeling as a Wrexham fan right now? I imagine, given the defensive ups and downs you've had in the first 2 months of the season, starting with October with back-to-back league clean sheets, you must be buzzing with that.
Yeah, and if we include the EFL Trophy, I mean, that's 3 clean sheets on the road. I know against a much change, but we've got to take every result that we can. Going to Mansfield, I think, is a brilliant. They'll be right up there, I think. And I've seen a lot of the teams that'll be. I haven't seen Gillingham yet, but I went to watch Notts County when they played against Salford. I know Salford have kind of turned it around, so it'll be interesting to see them this weekend. But Notts County, I thought, were brilliant. I'm probably not even at their best. They didn't need to be that night. I've seen Swindon. I think Dan Kemp's one of the players in the division for me. Dan Crowley's up there as well. MK Dons have obviously dropped off, and it seems like those fans are trying to hound out Alexander. So it can change quick. I think for Wrexham fans, I might have said this first time I came on, but it's been about recalibrating that we don't need to win every game, and if we draw a game or lose, actually it's not a disaster. And so it's taken a while for fans to go, actually that is a good point, and it isn't everything isn't 2 points dropped, and it's not always all right. If we lose 5-0 at Stockport, that is bad, and that is deserving of an inquest. And Tom was among those clipping up for us to digest it, but they are bad results, and MK Dons is a bad result, and conceding 5 in any game is a bad result. But I think for Wrexham fans, it's kind of dawned on us now, mid-October, that you know what, you can probably afford to lose 7 or 8 games and still make the top 3, and lose 10 games and still make the playoffs. So yes, the clean sheets have helped, but I think also just that recalibration of it's not all doom and gloom. It can be fine. It's it can be all right. It will be all right.
For sure. Tom, what have you made of Wrexham's start to the season?
I've been impressed. I think that, like Nathan said, it's all about that recalibration. And for Notts, we've had a similar thing. I think last season didn't help that every result you dropped points, it felt like the end of the world. You get an away. We drew away to Barnet last season, and Barnet are right up there again this year, and they were right up there last season. You drew away there, and you came away from the Hive thinking that's like a devastating loss, but a point against a team that are in the playoffs away, like that is a really good result. And I think that's the thing this season is you'll look back at points at the end of the season and think that was actually a good result, even though we're sort of programmed right now to think everything must be a win. And like the learning curve is steep for League Two. I think there is, obviously a lot of people will point to those 5 goals and say that the level of quality is different, a lot higher. I'm not necessarily sure there's a massive difference, but I just think that teams are more punishing. And we've both, you look at Notts have conceded several goals like that this season, and Wrexham have been the same. I wouldn't be too concerned because you look at the table and think they've conceded 23 goals, but a lot of those goals have come in sort of 3 or 4 games across the rest of the season. They've had loads of clean sheets, loads of good performances. And I think,
I think it was something like in the first 5 games for Wrexham, they conceded 13 goals, and they were from 20 shots on target the opposition faced. So that kind of gives it a bit of a distorted feel. Nathan, it feels like with the situation we've talked about with Gillingham, Notts County have had their defensive issues as well. We can talk about that. Stockport obviously in excellent form, but Mansfield are pretty light on depth, especially with the injuries. It feels like there could be a space opening up for third. Do you think Wrexham are in a position where you can capitalise on that?
I think we've probably got the deepest pockets if we need in January, and I think we've got amazing star appeal, which massively helps for players at this level. Though many players I speak to, and I'm not going to out any players, are desperate to grow their Instagram followings, and being in a picture with Ryan Reynolds will do wonders for that.
That'd be the only reason to sign for Wrexham.
Exactly. So I think there's a chance to rectify it, and you're getting players like James McLean in. For me, it's more about just kind of tweaking, because we are tweaking, and talk about the Stockport game. Ben Tozer's come out the last couple of games. Owen O'Connell's gone back in. There's a lot of pieces that are Football League pedigree. Jordan Tunnicliffe I thought was brilliant the other night. He'll want to come back in. And Ryan Barnett's obviously come out. Jacob Mendy's played really well. It's weird that we kind of stuck with a lot of the same players and tried to upgrade in key positions, and yet seem to lose all sense of kind of coherence that we'd had. This same back 3. Aaron Hayden's playing really well at the minute, but I still think that top 3 is right there for Wrexham, which always feels a little bit arrogant to say, but it does feel like it, because I just think goals aren't a problem, and if we can shore up defensively, and Paul Mullin hasn't taken off yet. I think that injury, I think we were unrealistic with what we expected of him.
Sorry, I did think he was very good against Grimsby, though. I think he had some flashes of him going back. I'm sure there's another gear in him for him.
Exactly. I think that's it. I think we've seen flashes, but we haven't seen that consistent, because it's a different level, I know, but he steamrolled the National League, and as Tom will attest, he just ran over teams, and I still think he can do that at this level. He showed it with Cambridge before he joined Wrexham. but that punctured lung and those ribs have, he came off the medication early because he wasn't feeling good. So that was against medical advice. I think we were kind of not rushing him back, but there's a lot of pressure on him to come back, be the guy again. And it's taken a bit longer. So for us, we've still scored plenty of goals, and the clean sheets give us something to build off now. So, like I say, I've been impressed with Mansfield, Swindon, Notts. I think were really good. And I got lots of nice messages off Notts County fans for once when I was praising Matty Palmer, who if Wrexham could sign anyone, that is who I would go and get in the entire division, any position. I just think he'd be a perfect piece. I just think he is so under the radar for someone that I talk about all the time. And you need players like that. We've just seen James Jones get a new contract this week at Wrexham, and kind of again a player that won't get the headlines that Elliot Lee does, and there'll be players at Gillingham and others that they're just like really key pieces of the team that do the dirty work, that will give the assist to the assist. Those kind of players that are worth their weight in gold. And I came away from that Notts County Salford game thinking, wow, if I could get on speed dial to Rob and Ryan with Luke Williams in earshot, that's why I'd tell him to go by. But I still think, to answer your original question, I still think third is there for the taking.
Do you think, you mentioned Matty Palmer there then, Nathan, do you think this midfield is possibly missing someone who's got that kind of the energy that Matty Palmer's got, and the ability to just always pop up in the right place in the right time, and the technical ability he's got as well?
I mean, we've got an array of options, but I think George Evans is going to solidify himself as that central defensive midfielder. So he'll be the screener, not the box-to-box type, which doesn't need to be. Elliot Lee will be that attacking midfielder. It's sort of the guy in the middle, that box-to-box one that we need, or someone that can play more of the passes. And that's not to be too disparaging on Andy Cannon, but his season hasn't taken off and got sent off the other day. Jordan Davis is essentially Elliot Lee. He wants to be further forward, the one that's receiving the pass. Luke Young is good, but entering the final year of his contract, two-time player of the year, it just doesn't seem like, no news on a new deal for him yet. And we've just seen James Jones get a new deal. James Jones I just think he's a different type of player. He's got a lot of energy. I call him the Duracell Bunny because he just runs around forever and ever. But I do think his execution is not quite at that player of the season level. And I think if Wrexham were to get that midfielder that maybe could pick a pass, I don't know what it is about Matty Palmer. I just think he sets the tone so well. And John Bostock next to him, I think, is not a significantly worse player, but I would rather have Matty Palmer. I just think he's less flash, but I'd prefer him to John Bostock.
Oh, interesting. Go on then, Tom. Who do you reckon's more important to Notts County, John Bostock or Matty Palmer, if you had to pick one?
Oh no, it is Matty Palmer. It is.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one, it is Matty Palmer. Yeah, he just does all the things that you don't see, and he has this ability. Me and my friends always joke, he can teleport because you think he's there, and then he's gone 20, 30 yards in a few seconds. Like, how has he popped up there? He's
apparated.
He does, exactly. It is magic. It is incredible. He is a one of a kind, really, from what I see. And Bostock's brilliant, don't get me wrong, but Matty Palmer just has that ability to pick up positions, and just his reading of the game is just so good. And I've said it since he's been in the National League. I don't know how he's at that level, and I still don't know how he's at this level. He's just so good. He's so good.
So Nathan, just to finish off, bringing it back to just the next couple of months between now and January, is it a case of staying in the top 7 and consolidating that position, and then you feel like you're going to have the capital in January to strengthen in key areas? Are there any particular positions where you've got your eye on other than that midfield spot?
I'd say spot on. I think just hang around that top 7 and just kind of be like the shark that's lurking, because everyone will have one eye on Wrexham thinking, are they going to make their push now? When are they going to make their push? Are they going to peak too early? We've got Stephen Fletcher, who's been brilliant since he's come in and could have scored an absolute belting goal at the weekend. I do think January, if we're looking for a sign in January, obviously it's to get you over the line, but it's also to go forward and to take that next step. If we were looking at League One, and I look at the strikers we've got, and I say Paul Mullin, I think he could, make that step. Ollie Palmer has been brilliant this season, but I've got my doubts of whether he'd be a solid League One piece. Sure. Sam Dolby, I've got my doubts on whether he'd be a solid League One piece. Jake Bickerstaff's young, unproven, can't get on the bench right now. Stephen Fletcher is 35, 36. Again, I would doubt if he could. So I do wonder, and whether that is Luke Armstrong, I'm not so sure whether they'll go back in for him at 500,000. But a striker is the one where, like I say, it's not necessarily about needing goals, but I think it would help to get you over the line. But also, you've got to try and look at future proofing in January. I wouldn't want just a 6-month move.
Although I do think Armstrong's going to be significantly cheaper in January because, one, you've got the situation where it's kind of out in the open that he wants to move, and two, he's not actually been that key a player for Harrogate in their recent run of 3 wins in the last 4. I think he might have only started 1 or 2 of those games, come off the bench. They seem to have found a formula without him. So I do think that might end up nudging him a bit, nudging the value down a little bit. But yeah, I think a big couple of months between now and January for Wrexham, Nathan. But it's been great to get your insight on it, and keep up the great work on the Rob Ryan Road podcast.
Thank you very much. Keep it up, gents. Gillingham soon and Notts County. The tickets still haven't gone on sale for Notts County away. Wrexham fans are in absolute meltdown. That should be a good. I don't know, Tom. They seem to be selling for the home end.
Yeah, I think you have to have, even the home end, you have to have had a purchase history. So because it's going to sell out, I think they know. So you have to have bought a ticket before to actually go to the game. So it's all a bit crazy.
But yeah, final word, Gab, is that in back-to-back weeks we've got Bradford City away and Notts County away. So I know Bradford haven't been, there's a lot of fans, a lot of travelling fans and big games. I think it's Gillingham a week or two after,
Right.
something like that. So
11th
that's it. So like you said, not only is it a big couple of months, it'll be an eye-opener for the fans, I think, to again see where we are, because MK Dons we could write off as a little bit cool, poor pre-season and all that sort of stuff. You can write that one off. They faded. Crew, you obviously down to 10 men, you get a draw. Stockport's just a really bad one. If you turn that around, you can just write that one off. But you can't really go through and keep drawing games. I think that's where Wrexham have got to not fall onto the Mansfield sword. Mansfield are drawing a lot of games, and I said to a Mansfield podcast the other day that can ultimately be your undoing. So let's see Wrexham turn the screw. Everyone's banging the drum. James McLean's retired from international duty because he's all in on Wrexham and their League 2 promotion bid. That's exactly why he's thrown it in. So we're all on the same page, Gab. Appreciate it. Speak to you soon, no doubt.
Yeah, cheers. All the best to Wrexham, mate. Delighted to bring in. I click exit on the wrong person there. Delighted to bring in our next guest, Russ Johnson from the Scarf Bergara War podcast of Stockport County. Good evening, Russ. How are you, mate?
Evening. Yeah, I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, we're really well, thanks. 6 wins on the spin for Stockport County in the league. You've shot up from 20th to 2nd. You must be feeling pretty good about your prospects right now.
Yeah, feeling pretty good, and I'm not sure this is where we're going to stop either, because we've got players coming back that are just going to bolster the squad. Nathan spoke about deep pockets. I wouldn't say we've got deep pockets, or not as deep as Wrexham's, but we've definitely got a deeper squad with a lot of quality in it, and they're all coming back. So we've got a big squad to play with.
Yeah, really exciting from that point of view, because I remember you saying, Matt, and I think we were talking about this on the podcast early in the season. You've got your knowing smile on your face already, haven't you? We were saying Carl Wootton was going to be a huge loss for Stockport County because they wouldn't be able to play the way Dave Challoner wants. And I suppose, Russ, what really impresses me is that he seems to have been able to switch things around and show a level of adaptability that I'm not sure I've seen before in his career yet, because we've normally associated with Dave Challoner with clear style of play, 3-5-2, wing back super high up the pitch, and I wouldn't necessarily have thought he would have the flexibility to go away from that. But the 4-4-2 diamond with a slightly more on the deck style of football is what's true.
It has, yeah. But I remember Matt also saying that we need to find a different way to play, which we've done. So with Barry and the surprise signing of Odin Bailey from Salford on loan on the last day of the season, we've gone
Deadline
3 up
day,
top. Well, it's not like you say diamond 3 up top. It's just worked wonders, and Louis Barry is a cheat code for this division, or it seems to be. He's doing things that we've not seen for a long time at this club. So yeah, it's working really well. The defense has showed up as well. So it's almost by accident, really. I mean, we spoke last time, Matt mentioned it. We had 2 fullbacks at wide centre-half positions. Because of injuries, we've been forced to play 4 at the back and go with that diamond and that 3-pronged attack up front almost. and that's when it turned. MK Don's away, it just clicked, and he's not moved from that. The players that come back in will have to probably adapt to that. Wootton came back against Doncaster on Saturday, looked like he'd never been away, which we're really pleased about. We were thinking, oh God, we've got to rely on Wootton coming back to get some goals. Well, not only have we not got to rely on him, but also we've got an extra way to play, and we've got other players scoring as well. So we're really enjoying life at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, do you think sort of actually weirdly being without Carl Wootton, who had been so important to Stockport's style of play, has ended up working in their favour because they've actually explored a different way of playing, which means that if Wootton does go out at a crucial stage of the season, then Stockport can say, well, hang on, we've worked out how to do it with Ollie Afe and Barry, as opposed to, imagine if Wootton had been there all season and then in March, you know, he misses a few crucial games and Stockport would be thinking, how are we going to cope with this?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a massive bonus for them. And the fact that he's back now as well, like Russ has been saying, it's going to add extra levels to their game. I mean, I love Woods. I mean, a lot of Notts fans aren't as keen on him, but I think he's brilliant, and he's been brilliant for Stockport, and that's what matters. I do wonder where he fits in. Do they go back to playing to his strengths, or do you continue with this style?
I'm not sure you can drop Barry or Ollie Afe at this stage.
That's what I mean. So that's the only question mark. But again, having him come off the bench is pretty good, isn't it? And also having it where if you need to go to that style, you can do. I think it's not a bad thing at all. I mean, Louis Barry is a joke, isn't he? He is just an unbelievable player. And yeah, he's far too good. I know his last couple of loan spells before this hadn't gone according to plan, but you can still see his quality whenever he plays, and like he's a ridiculously good player, and I think you can't drop him really. So yeah, Carl Wootton will add undoubted levels to their attack and different layers. But yeah, I don't think they need to change anything anyway, because the way they're going, they'll be top before long, because they've easily made up that gap to the top three. They're in the top three now, and I can't see them slowing down.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Russ, I mean, we might as well talk about Louis Barry, because what just excites me so much about him is he's got that, it's not even just the pace, but it's the speed of foot, where he seems to be able to wriggle away from opponents, and then that ability to kind of shape to shoot one way and then just play, shoot it like an incisive shot inside the near corner, inside the near post. He just seems to be able to deceive opponents, whether it's the goalkeeper or opposing fullbacks or centre backs.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he's just brilliant. He's got so much strength as well for such a diminutive figure, and he keeps the ball in areas where you don't expect him to keep the ball. Not at this level, anyway. Not in League Two. Just down the line, and it's a really tricky ball to control. It's it's that between the knee and between the waist kind of height, and you think, oh God, how are we going to? It bounced off any of us. He just it seems to stick to him. He controls it. He goes round. He shrugs off one or two defenders, and they end up sitting off him then, and then he can turn and face them and get at them. I can see why he's not made at Villa yet, because his end product isn't quite there. But that's why he goes on loan. This is his fifth loan, probably his final loan. He's probably going to leave in January. We're aware of that.
Oh, do you think so? You don't think he'll get the full season?
No, because I think somebody might be already tapped up to sign him, maybe at a championship level, and obviously he's going to go for that, isn't he? He's not going to stay with us out of the goodness of his heart. So, as a fan base, I think most of us are prepared that we're going to lose him. So we might have to go back to having Wootton and maybe Odin Bailey and Alafi up with him, and of course you've got Paddy Madden as well to sort of ring fence that. But yeah, he's just brilliant. He's great for us. I mean, he hasn't scored in the last couple of games, but he's provided he does all that work. Like we said on the last time I joined you, he gets involved in the play earlier on in the phases as well. So he's not just a running merchant. He's really, really good.
Matt, you had a bit of a chuckle to yourself. It's almost like, oh yeah, Paddy Madden. You've almost forgotten about him.
Yeah, he's the Papa John striker, isn't he? I did have one question for you, Russ, though, because I know you made me sound like I know what I was talking about there, which was brilliant, and it also makes our win opening day look a lot better now that you're sitting in second. So that's great. So thank you very much. But there was also, I think I made a comment about Ola Offie and said that I didn't feel he was a striker that was going to get you 15, 20 goals. Has the change of system changed how he's playing, and could he potentially now be that striker if you continue with this Diamond? Because he's got 7 in 7 and 6 in 4, and he's absolutely flying. He's red hot.
Yeah, I think I internally disagreed with you when you said that, because I like Olafi. I think he's really good. I think he's capable of 15 goals this season, and like you say, he's
Hasn't
already
always been uniformly popular though, Russ. I would say there's been times where certain, not necessarily myself, but certain parts of the Stockport fan base have probably questioned him a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And a good friend of mine is the same. I think he still doesn't rate him, but I do. I can see what he does. He doesn't give defenders a moment's peace. He's good in the air, believe it or not. I think he's about 5'10", maybe something like that. He's good in the air. He's good on the floor. He's strong. Can he fill that void? I mean, he already was at the start of the season. Okay, we had a bad start, but that wasn't down to him. I think it was just down to the team not clicking. Now we've clicked. I think he's going to go from strength to strength, and I think he'll surpass 15 fairly soon. And I'm not being.
Does the Diamond suit him better than the 3-5-2 though? Because I know
absolutely,
he played Nick Powell as a false 9, which was lovely from our point of view, and we mentioned that previously. But so you think maybe the Diamond suits him more than the wing back system? Yeah,
absolutely. The Diamond suits a lot of the players more than the wing back system, but not the wing backs. But that stands to reason, doesn't it? So, but then in those areas as well, Macaulay Southam-Hales, Niall's injured. Macaulay Southam-Hales as a right attacking fullback, he's just up and down, and he doesn't give a space defensively. So
also, Russ, you get a lot of work ethic from like Will Collar and Ryan Crowsdale don't stop running. So if you need midfielders to cover the gaps in that system, you've got them to do it, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got that in abundance. Hippolyte's the same when he comes back as well. He's one of those that will just keep on running. And I think Challoner likes that in his players. Where we've got slight doubt, and certainly I have as well, is Powell, because Powell is probably on a wage that demands that he plays. And he's a kind of player that would demand that he plays. He's probably good enough.
Can any wage demand that a player plays, though, Russ?
I would say so. If the owner is spending a lot of money on a player, I'm guessing he wants him to play. I don't know. But Powell is a worry for me because I don't know where he fits into this current system.
And that's concerning
I'm
for the rest of it.
I'm wondering, though, Russ, what you've talked about there with Louis Barry getting recalled, is there the possibility that Nick Powell then becomes the ace up your sleeve where he's not hit full pelt yet, but then you could respond to the loss of Louis Barry by then building a system around Nick Powell and getting the individual stardust from him? Now, obviously, that's a big gamble because he's not shown as much as you would have liked just yet, but he's got undoubted ability at League Two level. Is that something that Dave Challoner might have his eye on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. He has got undoubted ability at League Two. I think he's better than League Two. I think we can all agree on that. It's just where do you play? I can't see him playing out wide out left or wide out right. He's not that type of player. He's got to play central. So then does Sarcevic come out for him? We've got to play Collar or Crowsdale. So there's your midfield.
I would say both. I would have thought Collar at the base, Crowsdale at the base, Collar as your box to box, and then Powell as your 10.
Yeah. So it's an embarrassment of riches. Let's face it. I mean, I'm struggling to put an 11 together now. Talking to you guys here, I just don't know where Powell fits in. He could play up top, but then you've got Wootton. You see what I mean? So there's no real space for him, and I do worry about that. But I'm sure Challoner will fit him in. What I like to think is it's horses for courses. If we play a team that are really good defensively, got a good load of big strikers, it'll be Wootton and Powell probably who sort of line up on that with maybe some quick Barry and Laffy on the wings or Odin Bailey. But if it's defenders that are slow, then we Wootton sits back, Wootton's benched, and then we play Laffy, Odin Bailey, Barry, and Collar and the team that's been winning now. So I like to think we can switch it up, and Challoner's learning all the time as well. I don't think he's been this high in his managerial career, so he's learning all the time. So just wait and see. We're really excited though, and by the obviously the recent form. Just beat Salford in the Papa John's as well. I know it's not called that anymore, but happy days.
Yeah, well, really exciting times, I think, for Stockport County, and you're certainly very quickly establishing yourselves as a prime promotion candidate. Russ, keep up the great work with the Scarf Bergara War, and hopefully catch you up later in the season.
Cheers, boys. Cheers, mate. See you later.
Cheers,
Later.
fella. I'm delighted to introduce our next guest, which is Dan from Gandermonium. Now, Dan, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking we could kind of forget all the matches between the first game of the season and the most recent and just say Sutton atop the league with a +8 goal difference. I'm wondering how that sounds to you.
Suits me.
How are you keeping, bud?
Not too bad, not too bad. Apart from the football lately, not too bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, the 4-0 win over Warsaw came as a bit of a surprise, didn't it? Because I know that we were sort
Really?
of talking after the 2-0 loss to Salford when the optimism levels weren't particularly high, should we say. Has it just kind of stunned the fan base a little bit?
Yeah, that's probably a good word. Everyone was stood there at half-time 4-0 up on Saturday going, where did this come from? I mean, you couldn't have got a bigger swing from Tuesday to what happened on Saturday. I mean, Tuesday was, I mean, in talking to a lot of people afterwards, a lot of people had, Matt's got loads of credit in the bank, obviously, with us, and we're generally a reasonably optimistic bunch anyway, and obviously because of just the size of the club, and we never expected or planned to be a league club, really. Everyone's kind of been enjoying it and just sort of taking it as it came. But I think after that Tuesday game against Salford, there was a definite air of even the most sort of optimistic souls were a bit, where do we go? You know, there was nothing in the performance at all. There was just no life, no fight, no real spark there. And it was just, everything we did was just awful. And yeah, I think everyone had kind of gone, well, Saturday is kind of a must win. And then suddenly the team from the opening day decided to turn up again. And they just got stuck into Walsall, early goal, and then just ripped them to bits. So yeah, half time, no one had a clue what was going on.
Yeah, it's a tough one to unpack, isn't it? But I guess what I'm really curious about, Dan, is that the biggest problem for Sutton so far this season has been that Matt Gray is such a staunch 4-4-2 disciple, although I think he has played 4-5-1 in one game. But for that system, for the central midfielders not to be overrun, or for the strikers not to be isolated, you need the wingers in the 4-4-2. I think they're the most important roles in that system because you need them to be your Milners, if you like, that are running down and keeping it a tight four in midfield. But when you come forward, giving the support to the two centre forwards.
Yeah.
What's really struck me, Dan, is that you've lost the industry of David Ajiboye and Will Randall, and I guess it's taken Matt quite a long time, and perhaps he still is discovering this, how to operate without those two key players.
Yeah, I mean, that was one thing a few people did comment on around the time, that whilst I think we've upgraded a little bit with Patrick and Coley, who are meant to be the sort of the first two wide men now, they're probably better players than better rounded players attacking wise than Ajiboye and Randall. Dave and Randall were always tracking back their defensive duties. Both guys took them very seriously.
Yeah.
And they would always cover their fullbacks. They were always working back, always just giving us that extra layer of security. And we've not seen much of that this season yet. Either the message hadn't got through to the new guys yet, or, I mean, both didn't really have much of a pre-season. So maybe they were just physically struggling to do that a bit more, and we're told to push on a bit more and don't worry about it so much, and that combined with, I don't think central midfield's been again very settled, and we've just had loads of pressure on the back four, and it's just got to a point where we were making a mistake, conceding from it, or the oppo would get one chance, score, and you just got the impression that the confidence wasn't quite there yet.
Matt, it's difficult. I feel like we need to give Sutton another 10 games just for things to level out, because they've had that 4-0 win over Walsall, and I think that after that it's going to be really interesting to see where things do level out at, because I think this is a difficult season for Sutton, because although on paper this is the best squad they've had in their 124-year history, there's also the sort of challenge that comes with sort of replacing or rediscovering the synergy they've had in recent seasons after key departures, and with the league generally looking stronger this season and the absence of sort of basket case clubs that would normally give us a club like Sutton a little bit of a bit of help, although they have finished 8th and 14th in fairness. It's looking like a difficult season for Sutton, isn't it, Matt?
Yes, and we had, was it Sarah on previously, didn't we, the Sutton fan? And I said, because we went to their place very early in the season, and I said, and it's interesting that Dan made a comment about that Salford defeat. There was no fight, there was no guts to it, and that wasn't something that I got back in August. I thought there was plenty of that. I just didn't think Sutton were very good, and I mean that with the utmost respect. I just didn't think they was a good football side. I thought they was easy to play against. But yeah, let's hope for their point of view that Matt Gray has discovered a way to play slightly differently now, because he's had a group of players that he's been able to trust over a period of time, and when you lose them, and then your confidence is low, and I think this is probably a continuation of last season, because there was talk of playoffs at one point last season, and then the form fell off a cliff, and it's not really improved since then, aside from the first and the last game that they've played in the league. I mean, I'm curious for Dan, as from a selfish point of view, to find out how bad Walsall actually are, because we go there on Saturday, and our record up there is pretty horrific. So, but that's for in a minute. But yeah, I think you've now got to give Matt another month or two to see if this was just a blip, the Walsall game, and then they revert to type, or whether he has now found a formula that means that they might give themselves a chance. But we have said, I had them 22nd, I think, in my season preview. And that was no disrespect to Sutton, and I mean this in the nicest possible way. They're a non-league club in everything but the actual league position in League Two, in terms of their budget, their fan base, their ground. So they're always punching above their weight whenever they're in the Football League, I think. And yeah, without a basket case club that's been in there for the last few seasons, it means that suddenly there's two spaces open as opposed to just one to unfortunately drop through the trapdoor. But yeah, I think you've got to give Matt Gray some time, and like Dan said, and we've said previously, he's got loads of credit in the bank because he's done a fantastic job.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, how confident do you feel that Sutton can use the sort of the blueprint that we saw against Walsall as a means? I mean, how important is Harry Smith? I suppose that's the big thing. What sort of impact can he make on this team?
I mean, he's huge to what we want to do. He just gives us. He's obviously a big physical presence. He gives us just that focal point. He's not just a big lad you can bomb it up to. You can play into him. He's actually not half bad with the ball at his feet. He can drop off, bring other players in. It looks like the best two we've got is him alongside Aidan O'Brien next to him, and his experience.
Can Aidan O'Brien do what Matt Gray wants, do you think, Dan?
I think he's just his experience, and he's a very calm head on the ball. You can tell he's one of those players that when you watch, you can clearly see has played at a level or two above where he currently is. So I think with Aidan, it's again more, he hasn't had a lot of football again, and it's just getting minutes into the legs. But I think, yeah, with Harry there, he is big for us because he just gives us that presence. But he can win the flick-ons. He can bring other players in by playing into his chest or his feet. And it just gives us a bit more bite, whereas players like Lee Angol can't do that. We ask him to do it, but you watch him play, and it's clear that he's not. You can play up to him to his feet, and he's great at that. But if you're expecting him to win flick-ons and be that kind of physical man up front to kind of upset the centre backs, that's just not going to happen. So yeah, I mean, if we can keep Harry Smith fit, then that's a huge part of what we want to try and do.
And I suppose another huge part will be the partnership of Craig Clay and Christian and Gesson, both summer recruits. Looking like with the injury issues that's been a bit on and off with Craig Eastman, it looks like you're going to have to sort of really consolidate on that pairing. What have you made of them when they've played together?
Yeah, they've not really set the world alight, I think it's fair to say. Craig Clay's had a couple of okay games, a couple of half decent performances, and then a couple of quite anonymous ones, like against Salford, just wasn't there. Whereas Christian Gesson, you can tell, is still finding his feet. Obviously, we've got him from a National League South side. He's coming more into it. I think we've certainly seen more improvement from him over the last few games. Even in a couple of games where we were just crap in that run, at 3-0 down at Swindon, the only guy who was really trying to do something, trying to make stuff happen and drive us on was Ngesson. Right. But he's obviously of that age where I think he's 26, 27 now, where I think that's probably his hunger, where he realizes this might be his last chance. So he's at least putting himself about, and he's just now finding his level there. So they played well together on Saturday. So there's hope there that they can form a decent partnership, and we can start getting a bit out of Christian that we got out of Ali Smith last season and the season before.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully that's going to be the case, and Sutton can maybe do a little bit what Harrogate have done, where they've really put some form together, because this is going to be a tough season, I think, for the smaller clubs in the league, and you're definitely going to need to get your act together, but certainly something to build on with that 4-0 victory over Walsall, and hopefully there you've got a blueprint to kick on a little bit. But Dan, it's been great to get your insight on Sutton, and thanks for joining us.
Cheers. Have a good night, lads.
Yeah, cheers, mate. So I wanted to finish off, folks, with a bit of a general League Two chat, and possibly a few predictions while I've got you. I think, Tom, it's fair to say Notts County and Stockport are very much the front runners for automatic promotion. Do you see the race for third being? Do you think it is a case of one other, or is it a bit early to say that at this stage?
I think it's too early to say that. I think it's definitely Stockport to go up. I think obviously I knew they had the squad they had, but when we were talking to Russ then and he was going through all the options, I was like, this is actually ridiculous.
It's like there's just a list, isn't there? You know, the SquarePants meme where he's got a list that goes over his head, and
exactly that. I mean, we've got a great 11, but our drop off in our quality is what could cost us. I mean, I think our 11 is up there with any 11 in the league, but it sounds
like you can strengthen in January, Tom?
Maybe. We're not really a side that have overly spent. We didn't pay a transfer fee at all in the summer. I think that's right. And
I reckon loans. I reckon you could do well in the loan market, though, Tom, because of the reputation Luke Williams has got. Like, it from a stylistic point of view, if you're an Arsenal or a Manchester City, you know, who in League Two do you want to send your top young players to? It's Notts County.
Yeah, I think even players like Jody Jones, who we picked up last season, who was sort of out of favour he was at Oxford United and wasn't getting a game. I wouldn't mind Ruben Rodriguez back from Oxford, but I know he's playing really well. But, you know, in all seriousness, anyone, you know, sort of players like that are out of favour that we can pick up loans for, I think that's where we will sort of strengthen. But I think we're kind of quite a settled team right now. I was saying to my friend in the week, like, the EFL Trophy, as much as it's a pointless competition, it's actually quite exciting because we actually get to have a go at predicting the team. Whereas,
you want some of those lads coming who are sort of fringe players to actually get some competitive minutes, so that if they come to be relied upon in the second half of the season, you've got a bit more confidence that that they can do the job. But I'm kind of intrigued that in the 1-1 draw at Barrow, we saw Richard Brindley move to the right of a back three, and a lot of Notts County fans were saying that Brindley can only play in the middle. So, do you know how he fared at Holker Street?
Yeah, he played right before, and last season that was our back three was Cameron to the left, Baldwin in the middle, and sort of Brindley on the right. But we've gone back to that now. We started the season with that, and then we went back to having we went to Brindley in the middle, and that worked really well. And then all of a sudden we conceded 8 goals in 2 games, and I think we've gone back to that other system, which has not been wouldn't be my preferred choice, but it's been more solid. So I think as a unit, the back three don't look all that confident right now.
Yeah, I would say something's a little bit amiss from the outside, because I feel like there's quite a big gap between the wide centre backs and the wing backs, and I would want to see if it's possible to just tweak the personnel slightly just to narrow those gaps, so that you've got someone that's being really aggressive in the wide areas in your defensive third, because I feel like there's a bit of a vacuum there, certainly in the was it 5-4 at Colchester? I felt like that was quite a big problem personally.
Yeah, I think on the left you got Carl Cameron, who is quite aggressive, but on the right it's been the big issue is that Brindley isn't one. He never closes anyone down. Richard Brindley,
No.
He's fantastic. He's been probably our best defender this season, but he doesn't close anyone.
And that's fine, Tom. That's fine in the middle of the back three, because you can sort of be the sweeper that's sort of watching everything and just stepping in where required, and you don't really need to be that aggressive. But I think as a wide centre back, you've got to be. Any time there's a duel, you've got to be right at it, and that's a bit of a red flag for me. If I'm
definitely, and I think we'll get better defensively, but we have already there are signs there like similar. We conceded 5 against Sutton, 5 against Colchester. Like we have that susceptibility to really get to really capitulate, but at the same time we put in Swindon was a game where we defended really well in the second half and only conceded 1 and things like that. And I just feel this weekend, obviously, it's a huge game against Mansfield, and they're quite tight at the back, which is what we're not. So it's kind of like a really strong attacking force against a really strong defensive side. So
could you play Adebayo rolling as a right centre back and play Aaron Nemain as a right wing back?
Possibly. I think we kind of toyed with the idea in pre-season. The thing with Toby, with Adebayo, is that his concentration levels on he'll admit it himself, his concentration levels aren't the highest, and so as a centre back, he's probably susceptible to switching off. Sometimes he gets caught offside a lot, sort of things like that, where he's not always switched on. But in terms of physicality, you're not going to find a better athlete, I don't think, than him in this league. He is just so big and so quick. It's like he's really good.
Shadowgi says hello.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't mind him in January if he's kid is
kid's a joke, an absolute joke. Like, I don't know where Leighton Orient said. I've said this plenty of times. Leighton Orient centre half must have been ridiculous last season. That kid will play in the Championship.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to see on that one. Matt, I mean, with Gillingham possibly being in a bit of transition, I'm not sure I see Gillingham getting in the top 3. Do you feel like there's a spot that could open there?
What, instead of us?
Yeah.
Potentially, because there's 34 games to go. I think there's a potential that Gills could win the league. There's potential that Gills could finish mid-table. There's potential for everything at this stage of the season.
Okay. Well, we'll do a podcast on the potential for everything next week.
That's fine. But
in terms of your opinion, you like if I asked you to pick her top 3 now, I'm presuming you'd put Stockport in there, possibly Notts County. Would you put
Stockport? I had to win the league, so I'll stick with that.
Right.
Wrexham, I had to finish 3rd, so I'll stick with that.
Okay.
MK Dons are going the same way as your MK Dons prediction last season at the moment. So then I think it could Notts County. I had 4th, so there you go. I put Notts County, and I had us 6th, didn't I, at the start of the season? So, but the thing is with us, if this perceived thing that Neil Harris wasn't getting enough out of the squad, and we're already 3rd, then why can't we be in the top 3? Would be my counter argument. But again, it then comes back to other factors. How long does it take to appoint a new permanent manager? Is there going to be a massive stylistic change, which could take time? So we could almost be. I think we'd be more in transition if we go and appoint a manager that wants to play nice football rather than now, because I don't think we're going to see a lot difference from Keith Millen to what we was getting from Neil Harris. Period could ironically come if we go and take a completely different approach when we appoint a head coach, not manager. Change of direction. So it's tricky at the moment for Gills. Obviously, we know we've got to score more, but there's certainly been signs in recent weeks that we're getting into better areas. I mean, Macaulay Bonne could have had 3 hat-tricks, and that's not even an exaggeration. He missed absolute sitter at Crewe. He probably missed easier chances than he scored last week against MK Dons. Doncaster missed 2 sitters. So I'd be more concerned if Macca wasn't getting into the right areas, but he is, and he's got 2 in his last 3, and I think he'll go from strength to strength now. And we've still got people to come back as well. I mean, the list isn't quite as long as an extravagant as Stockport counties, but we've had no Timmy Dieng for 4 weeks. We've had no Ollie Hawkins all season, so they're going to come back in at some point. And again, I think similar to what Ryan said about Wrexham, if we're in and around it at January, I think Brad will get the checkbook out to ensure that we stay in and around it. So I'm not going to write off our top 3 chances yet, but at the same time, I'm not going to say we're a shoo-in at all, even for the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. So, Tom, I mean, if you had to go for a top 3, you've mentioned there that you feel Stockport are a lock. I'd imagine you'd be quite bullish about Notts County. And then I just want to kind of run through some of the other immediate sort of obvious candidates. You're looking at, I think it's hard to see Wimbledon or Crewe getting top 3, much though it's a possibility. Mansfield, I think, have been really impressive, but it's whether they can sort of dodge the injuries and possibly strengthen in January because they've got a cup run as well. Wrexham are obviously a very obvious candidate because they'll strengthen in January again. And then you've got Swindon, who at their best have been absolutely delightful to watch. So what do you make of the obvious candidates just below the top 3 at the moment?
Yeah, I realised that I was going to interject anyway and say I'm not giving the top 3. I realised I didn't really answer your question before. But I would say, yeah, not to.
Well, I didn't either, so it's fine.
Yeah, I would say, you're right. I'm bullish about our chance. I've been saying for a few weeks. I think we'll get into the top 3. I think Stockport's emergence has made me a little bit more nervous because I feel like it is sort of 2 spots we're now playing for. I know it's very early to go on Stockport, but I just think, I had them in the top 3 at the start of the season and they're flying. I had Wrexham in my top 3 at the start of the season, and I think if what Nathan said is right, if they can still hang in there until January, they'll strengthen, and I think they'll probably be right up there. I actually think Wimbledon have got a good chance. I really like
Really, for top 3? You think Wimbledon could get top 3?
Yeah, I really like their team. I think they've got a really nice balance. I think they've got some really good quality in their 11. They've got one of the highest quality teams. I think if you go through position by position, they've just got such a strong team. They've got one of the best keepers in the league. Ali Al-Hamadi's not really hit the ground yet.
Although he did score a hat-trick against Tranmere.
And so he's starting to pick those goals up. And I think if he can really, really hit the ground running, if he can really get going, he is going to be force to be reckoned with. Mansfield's the other team as well for me. Mansfield have been brilliant. And I don't want to big them up too much ahead of this weekend, but obviously they're unbeaten. What was a very interesting point that you made there, though, is the cup run. And we've seen that teams that have gone on cup runs of late in the last few seasons have struggled. And it's whether they've got the squad to stretch across all those different fronts. But to me, they should be higher. They should have more points than they've got. I mean, they've drawn so many games, which is obviously to unbeaten record, but it's to their detriment.
They've played well in a lot of those draws, though, Tom, as well, which I think is significant. So it's not like they've been sort of grabbing onto them. I do think there's
second half. They battered us second half the other week, but for 35 minutes up until the referee's call, we were much the better side. They were very. It was the very definition of a game of 2 halves. That game, I thought, first half. I said without the referee making that decision, which I don't want to get into because I actually praised the referee last weekend, and that's very rare for me. I thought we'd have won the game against Mansfield. We'd created plenty of chances. Pim made a good save at 1-0, and then the referee wanted to be centre of attention, unfortunately, which it did affect us, and there's no point pretending it didn't, because for 15 minutes up till half time, we were all over the show. And then Mansfield come out and they showed how good they can be second half. But I think we'd have beaten them if that refereeing call hadn't been made.
Sure.
But yeah, they'll be there or thereabouts. But I almost feel guilty because I put them 8th again.
I put them 14th, so I think I might be proven wrong on that. Well, listen, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. Gents, thanks so much for your time on this League Two podcast. This has been EFL Debate. Thanks to you for watching at home. Thanks to all my guests as well. And we'll see you again next week.